Representative Henderson, Representative Larson, Representative Sherwood, Representative Stith,
Here.
Representative Walters, Representative Swanitzer,
Here.
Chairman Nicholas. Yes, just printed it. It's in right on top. See it? Sorry. I will do that right now.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The appropriation for House Bill 33, which is the School Finance Career Technical Education Grants, was appropriated $250,000 from the Public School Foundation to the Department of Education for the period of July 1, 23 and ending on June 30 of 24. How much more do you need? School Foundation. It is the intent of the legislature that this appropriation be included in the standard budget for the Department of Education for the immediately succeeding fiscal biennium. Yes. This is a bill that came through joint education in an effort to get more funds available for CTE. So there are programs like welding that are expensive, automotive, all these are expensive courses in CTE. And if those schools feel like they run out of money, that they can apply for they can apply for money. I can't remember how much it is. Sorry. I wasn't here for this bill. Caught me by surprise. The grant shall not. Correct. For 1 year. On 50,000 up to $50,000 grants. Which isn't very bad. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
House Bill 33, Representative Henderson.
Aye.
Representative Larson. Representative Sherwood. Representative Stith.
Aye.
Representative Walters. Representative Swanitzer.
Aye.
Chairman Nicholas. 7 ayes.
All right, Mr. Chairman, thank you. Bring you House Bill 26. This is a pretty simple bill. Really what we're trying to do here, Mr. Chairman, members of the Appropriations Committee, is if you take a look, I'll just walk you right to the bill. Page 2 is really the meat of this bill, and it's going to be the last 3 lines, and it's nothing in the subsection shall prohibit the legislature from making one appropriation for both the design and construction phases of the project. And really what we're trying to do on this, Mr. Chairman, is we're trying to eliminate as much waste as possible. Now we recognize that there's inherent risk with this, but there's also an inherent savings with the potential, such as Coyote Ridge here in Cheyenne, which was delayed for an entire year between phase 1 and phase 2. I'm sorry, between phase 2 and phase 3 of the project, which equated to about $6.5 million that was required for us to come back to this committee to regain that $6.5 million to build a school just because of inflationary adjustments. Had we proceeded with the the lump sum of money for design and construction, we could have gotten that off the ground and ready to go within one-time funding. And so that's all this bill is doing. After we worked this through the interim, the committee, select committee felt that this was a good idea. I believe this passed unanimously out of the committee. And frankly, Mr. Chairman, that's really what this bill does. I'd stand for any questions.
Representative Chairman Brown, it doesn't require it. But do we anticipate that that's just going to be an automatic?
Mr. Chairman, I believe I'll leave that up to the infinite wisdom of this committee. I would say that would be our intent, is that we can do that, but it does say that nothing in this subsection shall prohibit it. So I do think that if there's a case in which this committee feels that it's an appropriate time to sit back and hold back between phase 1 and phase 2, or versus phase 2 to phase 3, I think that's really where you see the majority of the change is between phase 2 and phase 3 of a construction project. We do the design bid build process, and I think that that's where we have a hiccup in the system is we get to that process of design, then we go to the bid, then we go to the building, and it's that bid to build that really gives us the frustrations.
Follow up, Mr. Chairman. And I think right now we have a tendency to combine level 1, level 2 studies. And so regularly. And so would you anticipate that we would just, and I appreciate that it says it doesn't, this would lead me to think that we would leave things as they are, but it doesn't prohibit us from doing this. But I would then assume that you would just do level 1, 2, and 3, appropriate all that at the same time.
Mr. Chairman, that is exactly what our intent was, and the discussion that held from the select committee was to do a lump sum payment, a single stream of payment to the state construction department to move forward with these. But it does allow this committee to place, if you guys so choose, that stoppage in payment between phase 2 and phase 3.
Thank you. Further questions?
It's kind of weird.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Janine Bateski from Teton County. If you all remember back, you all can't, but many of you were here when several years ago, we were seeking funding, construction funding for our Munger Mountain Elementary School. And it was contained within the same bill that Cary Junior High was in, and it was controversial. And here we are, it's the last day of the session, and it's like 6 o'clock at night, and the bill died in the House. And by the way, we've got all the design work done. We got shovels ready to start digging on Monday morning as soon as you cut the funds loose. And to this day, I'm thankful for Representative Zwanitzer for bringing it back for reconsideration that allowed us to move forward with it. So we are in strong support of this bill. I think one of the things that Representative Brown didn't say, which I think is kind of important to this, at least for me, is that along the way, there will be gateway checkpoints so that it's not like you're just blanket releasing all of the funds. There will be checkpoints that need to be met in order for the next tranche of funds to be released by the department and the commission. So I thank you.
Representative Henderson, Representative Larson, Representative Sherwood, Representative Stith,
Aye.
Representative Walters, Representative Zwanitzer, Chairman Nicholas. 7 ayes.
So committee, this is, excuse me, this is a capital finance bill that was referred to us. This came out of 3 or 4 different meetings with the in capital finance. And what I'd like to do is help educate this committee to help push this bill across the finish line. So if you would, Patrick, just tell us in a nutshell, the need for this bill and how it came about.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Patrick Fleming. I'm CEO for the Treasurer's Office. The need for the bill is twofold. Well, actually threefold, but the first one would be just to try and increase the salaries of the investment staff to be more commensurate with inflation levels. We haven't, the rest of the government has increased in salaries where the investment staff has not. To the ability to retain staff is not only a Treasurer's Office problem, but it's, you know, WRS, everything else. Representative Larson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Go ahead. So, Patrick, we've all received quite a bit of email today on this bill, and I think for the most part, the public does not understand the funding stream and where the funds come from and why. So if you could take us back to just a foundational level for a little bit for the folks that might be watching us, because we sensed that there was quite a bit of interest thinking that we're adding so help them understand where these funds are generated and how we pay for these employees.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Larson. I can start at the beginning as far as the funding. Leave that to Don. I don't get into the funding side of it, but to take a step back. When I was first hired in 2015, I was one person. Diana Walters retired, and I was one person managing the $19 billion. At that time, we were significantly understaffed. And so what we did with your help is that we said, well, if we can build out the staff, we will reduce the amount of fees that we are paying to outside fund managers. So what we did is at that time, we said, well, we could up to $3 million every 50 cents on the dollar of fee savings that we are able to generate, because we manage about 1/3 of our portfolio in-house, that we would then be able to build out the staff. At that time in 2015, the average fund our size had 21 investment professionals. We had the FTEs at that time. So fast forward today, we're up to 8 individuals. And we have 2 additional availability. We have spots to fill, but as you all know, it's extremely difficult to find anyone. We did find one fellow who's from Oklahoma City, but is working in Germany. So we were able to do that. And we still are looking for someone on the, as far as the analyst goes. The 2 people that we've lost, one was the attorney for the office who we've lost, and we haven't been able to find anyone on that. Don knows this inside and out. And then the investment officer who we lost, who left, he was paid about 3 times what in salary of what we were paying for. As far as the funding for these positions and the increase, I'll pass that over to Don.
Go ahead, Don.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Dawn Williams, Deputy State Treasurer. The funding for these positions comes from the investment earnings themselves. So right now, the value of our portfolio is approximately $24 billion. The amount of salaries and benefits paid for our investment professionals is about $2.5 million, which is, I think, 1/100th of a percent of what we're actually generating for the state of Wyoming. So I know it sounds like a lot of money, and you all have had the benefit of hearing this many times before.
Don, 2.5 is a biennial number or an annual?
Biennial, Mr. Chairman.
And what I'd like to do, by the way, is plug it back into that original formula, the 3 million, and then do the analysis of what we're making over and above on our returns, on our alpha, just when we get back to it. But go ahead.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, thank you. So, so those numbers are very big to most of us, and I think that goes to what you were speaking about, Representative Larson, about some of my fellow citizens around the state being concerned at these large salaries, because they are large, but they're not even close to being competitive with the other folks in the same business in other states or firms. And so we're attempting these, and the salaries that are proposed in the bill aren't really not even close to what those are, but they are an attempt to try to at least keep up with inflationary figures, which we have tied back to the Wyoming index. And again, the amount of money that we're paying our professionals when compared to the amount of money that we're generating for this, that they are generating for the state is fractional.
Chairman,
Please.
Mr. Chairman, Dawn, if you know, because you've given us a good qualitative analysis of our current investment managers being paid much less than they would make in the private market. Do you have any sense for where their salaries are right now as a percentile? I assume they're below the 50th percentile just because they would make more money in the private market. But do you have any sense for where they are? Are they 30th, 35th, any idea?
Mr. Chairman, Representative, my name is David Swindell. I'm the chief, or I'm not the chief investment officer. I'm the executive director of the Wyoming Retirement System. Sam Masudi is our chief investment officer. And I do have some recent data and can provide you with some surveys. You may be familiar with the annual McLaughlin survey that Aon puts out. Aon's a consultant, and we got their numbers in. These are dated October 2022. It's the most recent available. That our chief investment officer base salary, which is a substantial salary, it's $250,000 a year. Nonetheless, that is 33.9% less than median, and we rank 41 of 44 systems they survey. Gives you a sense. Senior investment officers, 189K is what we pay. That's 21.3% below median. We rank, we're in the 28 out of 34. We get a little better because this committee did support performance compensation in 2019. So the other way to view that is total cash. And when you get to total cash, we approach median. Sometimes we're behind it. Yeah, in the CBIZ survey, the total cash that we have is would be 500,000 because our chief investment officer can double his salary. That's the biggest performance comp we pay. Nonetheless, the 50th percentile is still 547,000 in the survey. So we approach median, but we're still a little below it once you consider total cash. And we've got those surveys just in. So bottom line is salaries, qualitatively, investment team salaries in the Wyoming retirement system rank in the bottom quartile. Total comp is just shy of median. If the bill passes, it'll enable us to pay a little higher in base. Also, that affects performance comp because our performance comp system is also as a percentage of base. So both items would go up and would allow us to retain and attract competitive talent.
From our perspective, that's worth about 50 basis points a year.
Mr. Swindell, would you mind just making sure that you could provide our staff with those numbers so that we have some data that we can use when we present the bill?
I can do that.
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead. Dave.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Piggying back a little bit on Representative Larson's comment, I believe the public believes that this bill is going to affect 400 or 500 people. So what's the kind of number total, just so those people that are watching, here on the committee meeting, we're talking what, 10 people maybe?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Swanser, in our office, when we're fully staffed, that's 10 people, including the chief investment officer. And may I add one moment? When Mr. Swindell says that they are ranked, he has the benefit of being in a pension program that's more easily compared to other program or to other systems, whereas we run into trouble in our office because we don't have comparator sovereign wealth funds. There are sovereign wealth funds, but not to the extent or the value that ours is. And so, but we do find that when we did some comparisons for those subcommittee meetings that Chairman Nicholas referred to, that we find ourselves within those same percentages that Dave mentioned. And we'd be happy to provide that information to you again that Lisa did compile over the summer. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Swanser, for the retirement system, this affects 7 professionals.
Go ahead, Patrick.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, to follow up on Representative Larson's comments, a couple things. One is, we're talking, most of the conversation has just been about other comparative systems, but the other part of it is just purely inflation. Just looking at the inflation adjustment over the last 5 years, which is averaged approximately, depending on what date you're looking at, is 20-odd%. And so just getting in Wyoming inflation, approximately 20%. It depends on the date. You can massage the data any way you look at it, depending on the time. But then if you look at Wyoming inflation, for instance, Wyoming inflation was higher than the overall national inflation. Our year-over-year number last year was 10.1%. So just on an inflation adjusted catch up, it's not even comparing to other people out there. We're just talking about being able to get some sort of inflation catch up. And the rest of, as I said before, state employees were able to get something where we were not able to. That was 0.12. The comment about the median with the bonus part of it is if you make your bonus, that's the other thing. Many of these systems do not have a performance bonus based on your alpha production. They have just a performance bonus, which just about, I don't know the percentage, many of these individuals get a bonus just because of where they are in the position and if they do extremely well, they'll get more and less and so forth. But for us, it's black or white. It's either yes or no. There is no partial bonus. You either outperform or you don't. So that's the one part. The other question that you had mentioned is in the alpha production. If we go back to 2015 and look at the performance of the fund from that, we have 20 years of data, but from year 7 to 20, the alpha was approximately 10 basis points. Alpha is the percentage basis points above an index. So if the S&P is at 10% and we produce 11%, that's 1% or 100 basis points in alpha. That's what I'm referring to in alpha. So if you take 10 basis points of the total fund at that time, 7 years ago, it was 19 or whatever. So you're talking about less than $20 million in alpha. So from years 7 to 20, the average alpha production was 10 basis points. Then we go back from 7 years, it went from 10 to 20, 5 years from 20 to 30, 3 years from 30 to 50, and last year was 70 basis points. So we're in the right trajectory. That 70 basis points equates to approximately $175 million. So if you're saying on a per person, production, it's about 20 million per person within the investment office of how much you're producing. And I'd be hard pressed to say the amount of money and the percentage of alpha and what we're able to produce. I think there are very few people in the state other than WRS and the state treasurer's office that could have that impact. Losing these individuals is significant, extremely significant. And that's what I want to get across is if we lose them, it really hurts.
Go ahead.
Just making notes, Patrick, for information on the floor, and you said 175 million. And I took that to be additional revenue generated as we exceeded our goal.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Larson, that is correct. And that's just all I'm doing is taking the alpha off of the RVK report and on the treasurer's website for anyone who wants to look at it. We have all of the data. So you can take the year-end numbers and see what's happened for many years.
But then you made, and it was a good point, but the math didn't work for me. You said that equated to about 20 million per person, but then I thought we heard we had 10 people.
Mr. Chairman,
So I guess
Representative
we're
Larson.
around 17. Okay,
We have the ability to hire 10, but we've only had 8.
very good. Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Please.
thank you. Thank you, Patrick, for being here. Some of the comments you just made, could you summarize those in an email to us so that we just have that information accurately about the amount of alpha produced, what the office was doing previous to the internal investment folks and post internal investment folks, pre your arrival, post your arrival, you might say, because as you said, it was years, the first 15 years, we were averaging 10 basis points. Now we're averaging, then you arrived and you were a one-man show, $20 billion, $19 billion, got to 20 basis points, 30, 50, and then it's a great story. I just want to be able to accurately state it and
And so,
not misrepresent it.
So what I'm going to suggest is, because this is such a big deal, that we'll probably have an informal meeting with Patrick and take the materials that were submitted to CapFin, assimilate it into a kind of a presentation form that we might actually have 2 or 3 of us present when this bill comes up to prepare for it. Because it's in addition to the retirement side, it's a huge amount of money, and and so we have to do it right. I mean, we have to do it in a way that we've got supporting data, and we'll have handouts for it to kind of explain it and walk through it. So I think just need to plan on that sometime in the next week, because this won't hit the floor probably till next week at the earliest. And so we'll have time to put all that together.
Another question, if I could.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Moving on. I understand what the bill does. It's both are the same thing in the STO office and WRS. So kind of the same request, David, but in the bill, and really it's a question I have that I just don't know. For your investment team, what is their ability to work remotely and still be effective members of that investment team versus needing to be located right here in Cheyenne, knowing this is going to come up?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Walters, it is different from the 2 systems because we manage so many of our dollars internally. So, and it's purely the belief that I have as CIO. When you are managing assets internally, meaning you are making the calls, you are deciding whether to buy the bonds, sell the bonds, buy the stocks, sell the stocks. It's very different than when you're managing managers like the WRS does. And so I'll only speak from the treasurer side, but the actively managed managers, so the people who are doing those bond trading, I think it's extremely important to have the people together in the office. For instance, if you're managing private equity after we lost our senior investment officer who was in charge of the private equity, I took that over and I've been doing that in his absence. But it's a very different animal where you're just only talking to the managers and you're going out. You don't need, if you're looking at a 13-year investment, you don't need to know, what's going on in Japan, in London, in Australia, and the UK. It's not the same dynamic because the asset class and the need to know that information instantaneously is very different. So for some members of our staff, you could absolutely work remotely, but for others, I don't believe you could.
Final question, and it's
May I please? add
Go.
to that? Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Representative Walters. We do have remote work in our office. So I think you're probably getting to whether or not we could hire somebody in New Jersey to be an effective member of our staff in the office. Probably not, depending on the position. But just but to clarify, if somebody said, well, I know one of those guys in the investment office works from home, we do have telework option on Mondays and Fridays in our office, just as a differentiation.
thank
Thank
you.
you.
And then final question, in the bill on page 3, it's discussing the reimbursement for moving expenses. And we say in lines 12 through 14, reimbursement shall only be provided to employees who are relocating and plan to establish residency in Wyoming. Would it be harmful to that if we said they had to repay it if they didn't live here at least a year or at least 2 years or something? Or is that a deterrent and they say, well, geez, I have to do that, then I'm not quite as interested in the job?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Walters, from my perspective, absolutely not. No, if you want to come here and live in Wyoming, get the reimbursement, absolutely. If you want to live in Colorado, it's your choice, but I would have no problem whatsoever from my perspective. And I don't think that would be a big deterrent from the people that we're looking at.
Go ahead.
And Mr. Chairman, Representative Walters, I would concur. If you want to put a 1 year or 2 year stipulation that you have to pay it back proportionally, no problem with that.
Yeah, we had that discussion in CAP then. We're not going to pay people to move to Colorado.
Right.
So, I mean, I think it was contingent that they moved to Wyoming, but we didn't put a time frame on it, but that makes sense. Okay, further questions? Dave?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I probably need your help to answer this, but it's very specific that we'll pay the moving expenses for one employee. Is that a universal term we use when we really know that we're moving the family? So do we get in the problem, if the family wants to come with the employee, do we need to address that as the term of the bill?
I don't believe so.
Okay,
I
thank
think
you.
that it's a generic, so it could be a family or it could be one person. Either one, but we just cap the dollar amount for total amount you can expend. Okay, thank you. I believe. Representative Stitt.
Mr. Chairman, Patrick and Don, I apologize if this is repetitive, but on the fiscal note that we have, it says in the state treasurer's office, the anticipated increase of cost of this bill in fiscal year 25 would be $254,414. Does that reflect just the adjustments to the base salary, or is that the estimate that, if you know, does that include the potential also bump in performance pay? If you know, obviously knowing that you didn't prepare the fiscal note, but I'm just trying to figure out what it means.
No, Mr. Chairman, I worked on the fiscal note with Matt. That is representative of, and I'm trying to think back because we went back and forth with LSO a little bit about that. I believe that that's inclusive of both, because in the first year of performance compensation so that would just be the salary for that FY24. Is that the year you were asking? Because when the guys don't earn their performance compensation, this would be effective July 1st. So the first year they'd be eligible for performance compensation is in FY25. So the FY24 is just inclusive of the salary and benefits.
That answer your question? Yeah. Representative Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, could I get sort of a feel for the mix of the 10 positions? You have a chief, obviously a senior, and then how's the rest of it look?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Henderson, we have the chief investment officer. We have 4 senior investment officer positions. We have an investment officer position. We have 2 senior analysts, and we have 2 analyst positions.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Chairman, quick follow-up. Thank you. And then, so looking at your organization and the retirement board, to what extent would you foresee, interaction, that kind of thing? What I'm thinking of is an opportunity for fiscal synergy here between the two agencies.
in terms of talent.
Mr.
Well,
Chairman-
sometimes they steal from each other.
Mr. Chairman, that and Representative Henderson, that has happened before. The subject has come up before. There was a few years ago, there was talk of combining our two in our two agencies because of but our missions are very different. And as Patrick mentioned, we have an internal investment function, whereas the retirement system does not have that. And again, our missions are very different. I'll let Dave add to that.
Mr. Chairman, Representative, I think that in the end, we share intellectual capital. We share some ideas. A manager may come to Cheyenne and he'll hit both agencies. So we can both leverage that, and sometimes it can be a combined presentation. But overall, I think Don had it right. The retirement funds are managed for the exclusive benefit of the retirement members. We are generally, we hire managers. We don't trade stocks and bonds individually ourselves for the most part. We occasionally have a limited tactical trade. But for the most part, we allocate amongst managers, and our purpose is different. And so sometimes in our portfolio, our strategic benchmark and the asset allocation set by the retirement board is different. And therefore we invest differently because we're trying to meet that asset allocation. So generally, yes, we can cooperate and share some resources and sometimes share a manager interview. But that's about it. In terms of actually doing the work, no, not much. It's two different animals, even though they're managing money, and it sounds like it should be the same.
Just to clarify, Mr. Chairman, my question is going to the point about some redundancy and backup capabilities, you know, on staff. That's where I was going with that. But thank you. I understand the answer.
Okay, further questions? Any other public comment?
Mr. Chairman? I'm sorry, but this is very important. There's no appropriation in the bill for either one of our agencies. And as a result, we'll have to do a B11 and go through that process to have the governor approve it. And just wanted to be aware. It seems odd that there's no appropriation. Okay.
So, Mr. Chairman, maybe if they could get that as we pass this out, we could do that on the floor. It seems to me that would be cleaner than doing a B11,
Do you have the numbers?
Mr. Chairman, yes.
or we could do it now, Mr.
Oh,
Chairman.
you mean now? No, Mr. Chairman, I will send you. It's in the fiscal note. And then it would.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Walters, I think the number in the fiscal note that I saw from LSO is simply the non-appropriated impact on performance compensation, which wouldn't be the total impact on base wages. They gave you the 188,277 number.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the impact on if we max out performance, if you increase the base pay to a max. And then how much does that impact performance comp with the benefits rider on it? Yeah, that's that number, 188,277. We never directly appropriate the performance comp portion. That is always handled via the B11 process. The way it works is if they earn performance comp, then we pay it according to statute, and that wrecks the budget. And then we repair the budget by going to the governor and getting a B11. So that's how that part works. But increasing the base wages is part of our base wages is part of our normal approved administrative budget. And these increases are not in the present administrative budget. And so in the example, if we're going to raise my chief investment officer's base pay from 250,000 to 300,000, we'll need an appropriation to do it.
Is this, as it's crafted, it's effective immediately or July 1?
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
And we have those numbers too, as to what that is.
Mr. Chairman.
Our number is 274,264, including the benefits level.
Again,
Repeat.
That's a biennial number or an annual?
Annual.
Mr. Chairman, that would be an annual number, and the number is, I'm sorry, I spoke quickly, $274,264.
Is that based upon your current employees and their current status in terms of senior versus?
That would be based upon our current employees, the 7, and if we maximize their, raise their base pay according to these new limits.
Do we have that number for you?
Mr. Chairman, not with me. I did not print the fiscal.
So we know it's probably going to be 350 odd thousand. So I think we can move forward. We can just, we can insert the number without having this precise number. We'll just say approximately 350 and 274. And let's add that into as appropriation. And so we can move the bill out. But we'll
plug in the correct
the
number.
correct
before it hits the
clerical
floor.
number
It's-
when it's provided to us.
It's a conceptual amendment right now. Is that your
Yeah,
proposal?
that's correct. That makes sense? Okay, any further discussion? We have an amendment. No, we'll move the bill. Any public comments? Any public comment? Seeing none, we'll close public comment. Motion on the bill. Moved by Representative Walters, seconded by Representative Sherwood.
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
just a question about, I thought you had just said that we might have a proposed amendment to this bill to put in the appropriation
Yeah, right now.
into the bill.
Yeah, is there amendment? Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would move that we appropriate for the state treasurer's office approximately $350,000 for the base pay portion of this. And I say this conceptually knowing that we will, before this goes to the floor, it will still be a standing committee amendment, but that 350 will be refined to its exact amount based on information forthcoming. And approximately 275,000 for the WRS for base pay salary. Again, that will be refined before we actually take this to the floor to get the exact amount.
Second.
Discussion. Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, so this appropriation is for fiscal year 24,
Correct.
and the purpose of that is that this goes into effect more quickly.
July 1.
July 1.
Thank you.
And so this will go into that section of the bill that is the appropriation. And for the retirement, it will come from the retirement proceeds from the treasurer's office. It'll come from earnings off of the income off of the invested funds. So does everyone understand the amendment? All those in favor say aye.
Dave has a question.
Go ahead, Dave.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is there any way we can remove the fiscal note that's attached to the bill? If you're going to come up with your own amendment, respectfully, I'm just saying it's going to be confusing on the floor.
After this motion, we will direct, before the bill comes out, we'll direct LSO to modify the fiscal number.
Okay, thank you. Sorry to interrupt the vote.
Okay, now we're back on the bill. Any,
On the amendment.
we already voted.
No, we have to vote on the amendment.
On the amendment, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion carries. Back on the bill as amended.
I have another amendment.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would move that on page 3, lines in the subsection Romanet 3, lines 12 through 14, as well as on page 6, lines 17 through 19. This is the reimbursement for moving expenses section. And I would add, and this is again conceptual, but live and work for 2 years for either the state treasurer's office or the WRS. So that allows them to switch between the two agencies, or they would be required to fully reimburse the moving expense.
For how long?
2 years.
Moved and seconded, so it's a conceptual amendment, and Jackie will work with you on that language. All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, that motion carries. Any other further amendments?
Question on the bill?
Question on the bill, as amended. Roll call.
Representative Henderson. Representative Larson.
Aye.
Representative Sherwood. Representative Stith.
Aye.
Representative Walters. Representative Zwanitzer.
Aye.
Chairman Nicholas.
So before this goes out, just so the committee knows, they'll bring it to me and I'll review those amendments and make sure that they're accurate. I'll circulate them. If you have comments, circulate them back. We'll also talk with LSO about amending the fiscal impact statement before this thing hits the ground. Okay? All right. Thank you very much. Onward and upward. Yeah, appreciate it.
Thanks for the extra time.
Yes.
So we had, no. Oh, yeah, we'll move to adjourn formally, but come on up, Jennifer, and we got some questions.
And yeah, that's